Greetings! Welcome to a look inside youth activities. I am your host, Ísgerðr Bjargeyjardóttir, coming to you from the northern reaches of the Kingdom of Artemisia. And welcome back to the show. Tonight is episode 8. Can't believe we made it this far. It's actually our last episode. And tonight I am welcoming my good friends, Sir Odde ap Tam and Lord Alec ap Odde. And we're going to talk to them for a little bit about transitioning from a youth player to an adult player. And before we do that, let's do a couple of business things. Please make sure that you sign in and welcome yourselves. Let us know who you are and give us your name and kingdoms. And if you have any questions or comments for either of us, any of us, please go ahead and throw those in. And our very good friend Jermaine is backstage taking all those comments, and she'll funnel those through to us. Also, please be aware that the views and opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not reflect any official policy or position of the SCA Inc. So yes, some of us are officers, but we're just here as Izzy and Alec and Odde tonight. I was fortunate to get to be in one of the kingdoms that Sir Odde has lived in. We were talking about that a little bit backstage. He mundanely is serving in the military for our country. So he is actually a second generation player himself. His parents were king and queen of the Kingdom of Atenvelt way back in 1984, I want to say.
Okay. AS Dirt, as I like
AS Dirt, yes. His parents are Countess Tamsin and Count Micah Longbow, who's also an amazing, amazing archery person, if you know who he is. And so he is here tonight with his eldest son. He is the father of 4, but Lord Alec here was one of the first people that came to Artemisia that I got to watch kind of grow up a little bit in the game. And he got our youth award a few years ago. He just got his AOA, I want to say last year. Was it last year at Whipping Winds?
Yep.
He has transitioned. He's quite the archer as well. So he's been the archery champion for a couple of different places here in Artemisia. And he's also a former heavy champion of the Barony of Sentinel's Keep that he won last year, one of his first tournaments as an adult fighter. So I got to know them fairly well when they were here in Artemisia. He is now just moved in the last few months to the Kingdom of Atlantia.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are definitely further apart than we used to be, a few blocks away from each other. Yep. So anyway, welcome to the show, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Odde, tell me a little bit about growing up in the SCA and the different kingdoms. You've also, because of your parents were also your mother was in the Air Force as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've played in how many kingdoms?
I think I'm up to 9
wow.
that I've actively played in. I've been to a few others, but actively played in about, I think it's 9. Every kingdom's a little different, but some things are pretty constant, and you just kind of figure out the little differences in each one, what each one focuses on, how they go about. Like some kingdoms really do English country dancing and the various brawls and roughy tufty things like that. Other kingdoms do much more bardic and campfires and a lot more camping events. And the northern tier kingdoms, it gets cold, so they have a much shorter camping season.
Yep.
So everybody focuses on slightly different things, and a lot of it's due to the weather.
Yeah, I suppose. So when you were a youth getting ready to be an adult in the game, where were you at? Were you being moved around, or were you more like in one location at the same time?
So when I was about 16-ish, we moved to Atlantia, and I stayed there. It was the longest I've ever lived in one place. I think it was 8 or 9 years. And so I was very into Bardic at the time. Still am a fair amount, but at the time, when you're 16, it's a very hard period to find anything to do. The adults that are around are like, I don't want to just hang out with a 16-year-old, and there's not a lot of other teens. So you kind of have to find a thing. My dad, being as amazing as he is at archery, that was a very tall shadow, and I was not a great archer. So even if I had an okay day, they'd be like, "Isn't your dad?" I'm like, yeah, I know. So I did Bardic, and it was to the point that everywhere I went, I knew all the really good bards, and I would kind of badger them throughout the day until they agreed to come by wherever the Bardic was going to be. So if I was at an event, there was going to be a Bardic there. And that was, you have to find something to hold your interest. And for me, it was Bardic. For other people I've seen, it's been some ANS.
Alec took on the arch. I'm sorry. Alec took on the archery thing, right?
What? You've done the archery thing, right?
You've done the archery thing.
He's better than me.
Yeah.
And that was kind of nice because archery is something that you can do as kind of a preteen, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I think you started shooting with this probably around 10 or 11, I would say, maybe.
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
Okay.
So archery is one of the great things about in the SCA that you can do from any age. And the ANS stuff, any variety of it, it's finding something that holds your interest. And on the service track, I can't even think about how many feasts I have helped serve at, because it was something to do. And if I was sitting at a table with a whole bunch of adults, they kind of, if I was the only kid there, they really didn't want to have a conversation with me because I was a lot younger than them. So it was, my breadth of experience was very different than theirs. So I would frequently serve and help out at the feasts and stuff for something to do.
I know that Zane kind of did that same thing with Bardic and service, mostly because I did both of those things as well. But that was sort of his thing too, was he became a fairly good bard during that period of time, so he could, have something for his own thing to do.
Yep.
So Alec, tell me, so you do bard, but you do gymnastics when you do Bardic.
Yes.
Have you looked into doing anything else for Bardic instead of your gymnastics?
So currently, I have been working on a routine to do, like I will have a tile routine if there's tile at court, or if there's grass or cement. But I don't have the greatest singing voice, so I think I've done singing Bardic once, but I think my little brother's better at singing than I am.
He definitely likes being up there more than you do.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh,
well,
yes.
Aaron is quite the performer.
Yes.
You missed him. So tell me something, Audie. I know that I've seen His Majesty at the time go, Audie, perform something. Tell me, what is it about like being a knight where that is a part of it? That's part of it, right? Like you should be able to do that.
I'm a big proponent of that. It's one of the PLQs of chivalry is you have to be able to perform at a moment's notice. And there is always a component of verbal to that, because you have to be able to project loud enough to lead on the field. So their majesties on a whim may say, entertain my crowd or entertain my populace. And to me, if you're not into singing, that's fine, but you need to have some sort of bardic performance ability. And I'm a huge proponent of everyone can tell a story. Every fighter's got a good story.
That was one of the things I did with Zane, was he didn't feel like he could write a joke. So I showed him how you can, go find a joke that you think is humorous that you can adapt and tell it like it's a medieval joke.
Yep.
And so he did that. It was, 2 construction workers on the I-beam turned into 2 Vikings on the wall, sitting guard on the wall. So
I'm a big proponent of, if someone ever asks me why, my answer is always because, one, their majesties may just tell you perform to entertain the populace. And before court, it's kind of one of your jobs to keep things moving. But it really harkens back to, you have to be able to, on the field, every fighter should be able to shout hold loud enough for everyone to hear. But also, as a knight, your job is to command the line and command a group. So you have to be able to project, and you have to be able to sound like you know what you're doing. And Bardic is a great way to build up that skill.
Okay, nice. So, Alec, I have a question for you. I know that right now, just because I know you guys so well, so you have just been authorized as a fighter for maybe a year. Is that right? A year and a half, something like that. And then you are injured now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how is that been a challenge, because of trying to go from a youth into fighting anyway, and now all of a sudden now you've moved into a new kingdom too, and you're injured?
So the fighting that I did there back in Artemisia, I would say that it's about the same when you join as a youth in adult combat. They treat you about the same as they would like a new fighter, but sometimes they're generous enough. Sometimes they will be like, "Oh, he's a kid. We'll hit a little less hard, just a little bit." And then moving here, the practices that I've been to, it looks like it'll be about the same, but there's lots and lots of people here. There's so many people here, and the transition from youth combat to heavy combat is so big. Like, it's from touch kill to you can hit as hard as you want. There's such a difference there.
So it's like little electric go-karts to drag race all of a sudden.
Yes.
He is going to have to go through the Kingdom Earl Marshal again, or their deputy, because society rules state anyone under the 18, only the Kingdom Earl Marshal or someone they designate can perform the authorization for a minor combatant into heavy, which I'm a big fan of that rule, because it's kind of a make sure everything is on the up and up and everything is good to go. So
when you do that, do you have to be there with him, Ani?
I don't have to, outside of, I think in the authorization process, the parent has to be there to sign the waiver. But beyond that, so Atlantia has a very strict authorization process, and a very by the book. and they'll go through all the stages. And because there's so many people, they do a lot of melees, and they also make sure that everyone is aware of the melee conventions, dying safely, how to fall appropriately so someone can stand on you and you're not going to get hurt. 4-on-1 combat, how many people can engage at a time, line combat, when you're engaged with a lion and spears. So all of those questions and things are going to come up. I will be there to sign the paper, and I'm going to be very, very quiet so that he stands on his own 2 feet. And if he's gone over all of the material, as he will before,
yes. I will have to read all the rules
before we once he's all better and is able to go through the process. I'll be there. I'll sign the paperwork, and I want to make sure that he is just stands on his own 2 feet.
So, is there a age limit? I know just from with Zane, he got authorized in rapier, but he couldn't get, like, he could do 1-on-1, but he couldn't do melee yet as like a 14-year-old or whatever it was when he first started. Mm-hmm. So is there an age limit? Like, is there anything you can't do yet? And are you 16 or 17, Alan?
I'm now 17.
No, I'm 17. Okay. So is there anything you can't do?
I think with parental consent, you can do just about everything, but it's something I will have to read up on because they do a lot more melees here than they did in Artemisia. Just, okay. They have the people to do it, so there's just very frequently melee events.
Right. Thora, I just had a question. How does Atlantia's fighting and collaboration compare to Artemisia?
So I have always said in every kingdom I've ever been to, Atlantia is the most organized in their training when it comes to shield walls, shield presses, melee engagements and tactics, regrouping. They are better at it than any kingdom I've ever played in because they do so much of it, because there's so many people at all these events. So fighter for fighter, if you take fighters of equal caliber in any given number, my money's on Atlantia almost every time. Just they do more of it, so they practice it more.
Because we were just talking about that you were at an event this weekend that is like a small event, and there's 300 people there.
Yeah.
In Artemisia, that's a huge event.
Yes. And they said if it had been a Royal Progress, it would have easily been over 500. And, these are also, they're down because it's post-COVID numbers.
Yeah.
So right. They're talking about like it's shrunk.
So the scale difference is pretty huge.
Yeah. Okay. And that's I'm in the DC area, in the DC Metro, Baltimore, Northern Virginia area. So there are 5 or 6 baronies within a couple hours. There's fighter practices all the time. And even at fighter practices, they'll do melee practice.
Wow. And how many people would be at like a fighter practice at your local barony?
So the local event, the local practice, we've been to a couple practices just after Penzic, which a lot of people go to. So the numbers were down a little bit. There were probably 8 or 10 fencers and between 6 and 10 fighters.
Yeah.
And they were like, numbers will get back up. And
yeah.
Enthusiasm wise, I've always found that every kingdom is full of enthusiasm when it comes to melee. Atlantia just trains for it. There are a few units. There's a Landsknecht unit in Atenvelt that is one of the most amazing, like, spear and glaive, pole weapon, mass weapon units out there. But as far as a kingdom as a whole, Atlantia trains unlike any other kingdom I played in.
So, Alec, did you feel intimidated at all, or are you more used to it being an Air Force kid and you've moved a couple of times now?
Well, I haven't fought here yet due to my injury, but I think it'll be about the same, because all Scadians are what I would consider nice people.
We want to kill our friends, not hurt them.
Yes.
Right.
is
Right.
kind of a fun saying.
It'll be a little bit different. Do you think it'll be, I guess that's a question. Do you think it'll be different because, like in Artemisia, you were the kid. And then all of a sudden, okay, now you're wearing armor and now you're standing against me and I have to try to hate you. As opposed to coming in already being in armor.
Yeah. Well, I don't. So when we were at the event, they said that they had recently done another youth authorization. So I wouldn't be the only youth fighter, and I think it'd be fairly the same.
Okay.
A lot of it is, and I've talked to all the boys about this. One of the things that happens is when you come to an event, if whatever you choose to do, one thing that everyone kind of instantly views you as an adult is if you put on armor and you are authorized and you're a fighter, all the fighters, for one thing, half the time you're in a helmet and they can't really see your face. Everyone assumes you're an adult.
Yeah.
And therefore, when you take the helmet off, you're still that adult. So it's kind of a poof, you're an adult. And most people will just magically see you that way because that's the image they have in their mind.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So does that put you in some uncomfortable positions at times? Conversation wise?
Yeah. But I feel like the fighting with the helmet does help a lot because they get to know you with the helmet, and then you're like, oh, you're an adult, okay, and we can go from there. And then conversation tends to be awkward.
It's like, wait, how old are you?
Yeah.
But
well, I've done that a few times myself, unfortunately. Look around and go, oh, that's right. There are still kids up. Whoops. Let's change the subject.
But especially when he was 16, and you can't authorize until you're 16. So obviously you can do some training before that. So he first bought armor when you were 15.
Yeah, 15. Or almost 15. Yeah.
Almost 15 or almost 15. Started like teaching in the basics.
Yeah.
So he was in armor some.
Yep.
But not trying to authorize and not taking anything resembling full force shots. I think
it was like
we gave you rattan and we hit you with buffers.
Yeah.
In armor just to get him used to the weight. And so that he was swinging a sword.
Yes.
But not taking full shots.
They are a lot heavier than buffers.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. One of the first events I went to, Dylan had to have been 14 and probably 105 pounds dripping wet. I mean, he's so skinny. And Rothgar, somebody said, hey, you want to put some armor on? And so they dress him in full armor. And he stands up and he comes to take a step towards me. Hey, Mom, look at me. And the weight of the armor kept moving him like 3 more steps. And he almost face planted right into the fire pit. I was like, oh my God, stop. Like, you have to be able to be strong enough to control all that weight that you put on.
It definitely takes some getting used to. And one hurdle that's always there is loner gear fits everyone poorly.
Yes.
And that's
everyone poorly.
Yeah.
Except the original person it was made for, probably.
Because it was probably made for 6 different people. So it fits everybody poorly. And it's kind of motivation to get your own armor together.
Yeah.
But it is off balance and just not great. But it is the way to get started, typically. I think we got you in most of a full kit when you started.
Yeah.
Just bits and pieces.
Yeah.
My old stuff and other
So
people.
how do you feel about going to this bigger kingdom and doing things like Bardic or ANS? Is that going to be a harder transition for you, do you think, as a teenager? Or is that...
Well, we'll move it, since when you move somewhere else, you have the opportunity to present yourself differently. And while you also lose what you had when you were back where you were originally from. So I say it would be easier and harder at the same time. But I get to present myself differently. So I think
there you go.
Yeah.
So now you're going to be a whole new you?
Yeah. Or maybe not. I don't know yet. I mean, we've been to one event, so.
There you go.
I think it's interesting. I was on a run with the other boys and I was talking to them about, like, you get one chance to make a first impression and how you choose to present yourself and what you choose to display and things like that kind of affects how you are perceived. ANS is always interesting in a new kingdom because you never know what's local to you when you first get there. For instance, when we got to Artemisia, Ian is astoundingly good with precision woodwork. Just blows me away.
Oh yeah.
How just like I'm good to like an 1/8 or 16th of an inch, and he's like
almost zeroed in.
It's like infinitesimal small fractions of perfection, you know?
Yeah.
So obviously his stuff, he takes a lot longer to get there than I do, but it is so much nicer than anything I make. So you never know what's going to be local to you. So I can learn from him, and we don't really know what's local in the area as of yet, but everywhere I've ever been, I picked up lace making in Atlantia before. I picked up a little bit of shoemaking, leatherwork, and card weaving in Aitenveld. So you never know what's going to be readily available. With the number of people here, there's no telling what's going to be here.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that's a really good point. You know, who is a specialist where, sort of thing. That was one of the things where when you were here in Artemisia, you're kind of the person that did lace in the north.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll see. At the event in a few weeks that we're going to go to, War of the Wings, there are several classes on lace making that I'm super excited to go to because I haven't really attended. I've taught some basic lace making, but I haven't attended a class on it in a really long time, like 15 years. So I could really, it'd be nice to get someone else's perspective besides just mine and books.
Teach yourself the basics again that you had decided you didn't need, but they really are good ideas.
Or like I do torchon bobbin lace and they're talking about these other kinds of lace and I'm going, I wonder what that is. That would be really good to know.
Right.
I'm excited. So even to learn more about the ANS that I do, but everywhere you go, you can learn so much. I learned, I picked up calligraphy in Artemisia, which may be everywhere, but I'd never done it before. And Ramut showed me calligraphy basics, gave me a very nice book, and really got me started. So everywhere you can learn so much from everywhere, and it's just that is one advantage, I guess, to traveling is you have the opportunity to, with travel, you can meet new people and learn new things.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because the society is so diverse. And I can imagine, especially over there where you've got that population base as well, you know, you don't only have all the people that have played that are playing currently, but you've got all the people that played before you. So let's see. We have a question. When Evan Phillips would like to know, when did you stop getting called a kid in the SCA? I am currently going through this and I'm 21. Lord Effin O'Phelan from Glenavon.
So for me, and I actually talked to Her Excellency Amanda Dispenser about this at one point. And For me, it was when I was no longer playing in the same place my dad was. There was a huge group of people who knew me as Micah's son. That's who I was. That was kind of who I was identified as in their mind. And for as long as we were in the same place, until I kind of met people without going to the same event he was at, and met people by myself without him around, I was known as his kid.
Jermaine says, for me, despite being in the military, she was 35.
And there are still people who know me as Micah's son. And I will always be to a lot of people, especially if they knew me as a kid. I'm going to see people who are going to be like, I remember you as a kid. And in their head, I'm still a kid.
Well, and you got that when you first came to Artemisia because of our relationship with being from Atenville, basically. Yeah. So you kind of got that when you came to our kingdom too, that you ran into several people that knew you as a kid.
Yep. And like, oh, you're Micah's kid. I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
And
Tamsin's kid too.
Make your own until you can step out of that shadow. And I'm not going to lie, the cooler your parents are, the harder it is. So Amanda and I had it rough.
Yeah. I think
her parents are cool and my parents are cool. And the more people that know them, the harder it is.
I think Violette and Rachel have that same thing.
They do.
Because everybody knows Till and Isabeau. And
it's hard.
Yeah.
And then you guys also, I think, one of the things that, I mean, you're Odde ap Tam and Alec ap Odde, and your devices are very, very, very similar, and you're wearing, hand-me-down garb and stuff. And so that's what I was saying to Ulrich last week was it's also one of those things where, you're wearing your dad's garb half the time. So if people are used to seeing Till in that for several years, and then all of a sudden you're wearing it and you look just like him, it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
So it really was for me when I moved. So even when I first, right before I joined the Air Force, we were in the Outlands, and we moved out there at the same time my dad did. And he knew people from way back when there, and I was Micah's kid. Sir Gabe has had the same issue. Excuse me, His Excellency Gabe has had the same issue. And he's Bobby's kid,
Yeah.
And I'm Mike.
So he goes to Artemisia, and then he's Gabe. But
I was Odde, kind of completely separate when I moved to Atenville, Southern Atenville, because yes, he was king of Atenville, but he was out of Denver before Outlands was a kingdom. So he was in the Denver area. So he was
Atenville, but he was outlandish Atenville.
Yeah.
Basically.
What is now Outlands. I mean, that was before Artemisia was a kingdom, before Outlands was a kingdom. At the time, I'm trying to remember how far Atenville stretched, but I know it went to the Canadian border.
And all the way to Mexico, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It went all the way up and all the way down, and it is now Arizona.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and that's what I mean. I've talked to Rothgar and a lot of those guys that came up as knights back before we were actually a kingdom or at the very early stages of it, and they wanted to be seen. They had to drive to Phoenix.
Yep.
And it was
it's finding
some dedication.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I mean, now if someone asked me what do I need to do, and if they're in Great Falls, Montana, I'm going to tell them you got to go to Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
That's where the bulk of not just numbers wise fighters are, but you've got to see how you do against a larger group of people.
Well, and we get more out of kingdom visitors at those events.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
there's a lot of Montana to drive through.
Oh yes.
Yeah. that's one of the problems with Northern Artemisia is it's just so spread out. It's just crazy.
So pretty though.
Oh yeah.
And I got to fight in the snow.
Yeah.
Got to fight in the snow.
Oh, I was so excited.
Oh yeah.
I had to like badger the other fighters to come out and play in the snow.
Oh,
it was like, come on.
Amazing. It was amazing.
Barely below freezing.
Only barely.
Just slightly. Yeah, we had one crown tournament when I first started playing that they had to shovel 3 feet of snow off of fighting Eric just to make it so that there was a big enough space for an Eric. And then the pictures, you can see everybody's like there's the Eric, and then there's chairs around that, and then there's people standing up the snow piles all the way around it. So it's like a audience. It was crazy. It was cold. It was very, very cozy.
There was a love rebel that, as the night marshal there, I canceled fighting because I got in the car to go to the event, and I had a loose random piece of 1/2-inch black foam padding that everyone uses in their helms, and it was below zero.
It was like minus.
It snapped in half. It had gotten so cold, the padding was brittle, and I went, fighting's canceled.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're done.
Yep, sorry guys, we're done. No fighting today. Nobody's gonna die when I'm at Marshall. Not okay. So
what else do you think is part of transitioning from a youth to an adult? We've got how do you transition? Do you think that you had a different time as a youth going into service? You said you did a lot of service as a youth, and I know Alec did.
What I consider not so I would help serve feasts, and I would occasionally like help schlep things from point A to point B. And that was I did a fair amount of it, but that was the complexity level of the service that I did. I would help someone pound steaks for Eric's, or set up a tent or a pavilion.
Yeah.
I wasn't running anything. I wasn't organizing anything. I was being free and cheap manual labor. And that was the level of service that I was doing. It's still service, but it's not. If you think about how they define the tiers of awards, they frequently say that the kingdom level award is helping the kingdom and for service, and like the baronia level award is helping the barony level. That was the extent. I was around and I was helpful, but I wasn't leading or organizing or structurally helping. I was free manual labor. So I was unskilled labor, and I was around because it was something to do, and it was something that I was appreciated for. And as someone trying to get out from my dad's shadow at the time, I wanted something that I could be. And since most bardics only happened in the evening, that's kind of one of the things that I would do during the day, is just little things where I could be helpful. And I became a little bit known for being somewhat helpful. If I was around, I'd swing a hammer or hold a pole or pull a rope.
Yeah. Mostly the same way he said.
I know that you, Alec, have run a few tournaments now as a young champion.
Yeah, my archery tournament that I ran. Yeah, that
was fun.
It was fun. A little complicated, but it was fun.
It was fun.
Yes.
So one of the things that I talked to Amanda, Her Excellency Amanda, about was doing things as a youngster, as groups. And she also, because of having the parents and stuff, but doing art and stuff as a younger person. other than Bardic, and I know you guys have done that. Your kids have also done that as well. Did you guys ever look into the YAFA program at all, the Youth and Family Achievement Program?
Started to. So I was a little jaded about it because almost all kingdoms, or at least several of the kingdoms that I played in, have a pages school, a youth academy, some official kingdom youth program that what happens is a crown will come into place and they will push it hard for 6 months for their whole reign. They will really push it, and you'll get youth who are coming up into the system and how they are able to promote service and promote excellence and promote the arts. And then the next crown steps in and that's not their focus. And the program just nosedives. There was a struggle for a while for archery, getting the tassels handed out in court to recognize its significance. Yeah. And the youth programs have frequently the same problem where it goes up for a little while and then crashes. And if it crashes for about 3 or 4 reigns, it's dead until a crown comes up, resurrects it again, tries to get it going. And you have to have 5 crowns in a row who really push it to really get people far enough into the program that they come invested in it. And I looked a little bit into YAFA, and when I looked into it, my kind of take on it was, this is a beautiful idea. How you can reach out, you can put your name out there, and you can set up for classes, and you can request someone to teach a subject at a given time. And it was such a cool thing. But to really make it work, you would need so many people to do it. And they never got that part going. They never had enough people, teachers and mentors in the program to make it work.
Well, that was one of the problems, and proximity with, and with because of our rules with the 2 deep thing. And then during the pandemic, it really, yeah. And so we're basically at that point where we're starting all over again, and we're trying to kind of, there is a group of us who are getting together and working on trying to pick some of the good pieces out of it and some of the good pieces of Page School and try to do something that might be a little bit more generic that can be done. But we'll see. It's as you said, it's a difficult thing, and youth activities has just been really, really difficult. And the pandemic did not do us any favors. We are really in a very much a rebuilding thing coming back out of that. So
it's really hard. Every time I see any of the youth activities, especially when they're organized at the kingdom level and there's a structure to it, and someone dedicated so much time, effort, and energy into getting it going, and they got it approved, and they got a charter done, and they got everything going, and then either their kids aged out of it, got interested in Boy Scouts, baseball, another sport that takes up all of their time, or something else, that they took a step back. And so frequently the whole system crashes because it was just 1 or 2 people really driving it.
Well, and really that's it. It's not self-sustaining as much.
No, we have a gap. You've got little kids at an event, and then they vanish at 10 to 14ish.
Yeah. And
if you get them back, most of them you get back 1920. 20.
Yep.
21.
Yeah.
So there's
so
that.
We have one more question for you. So this is from Blue Tozak. Question for Alec. As a youth, how would you describe your experience in being part of court? What has youth inclusion looked like to you?
So back in Artemisia, I had an event where I was called up into court like 4 or 5 times. I'd say
Because you're so awesome.
yeah, it was amazing. It was the greatest experience ever. My mom was tearing, and it was amazing. It was just awesome. It was just awesome.
So one thing that I try very hard to do with all of the boys is I give them a task in court.
Oh yeah, we don't really succeed in that, but we try.
So in court, I do bob and lace.
Yep.
Because it prevents me from fidgeting. So I do bob and lace in courts. And in order to keep the boys interested, one thing I have them do is whenever a lady is called, if she goes up, to make sure she's not unescorted. And it's something that you can do to try and get them engaged and involved.
I love that.
Otherwise, a lot of times it's better for them to be back playing a board game.
Yeah.
Not in court, because they're gonna get bored in a big long kingdom court.
And
I've tried and you guys know that's one of the reasons why you get called up in court so many times, Alec. But I try to, do something, especially at a longer camping event or something like that, where there is going to be something where there's a reason, there's a youth tournament of some kind, there's a youth activity of some kind. They've all made something, and I try to carve out a few minutes for those kids in court for them to get up and show their stuff to the king and queen, or show their stuff to the populace, and try to encourage them to do that. I also try to encourage them to do bardic, which is one of the reasons why Alec is a bardic too. And one of the things that we've done in Artemisia in particular is that, I don't care what you're going to do. I did a youth Olympics activity where we did a interpretive dance as one of the things, and you could do whatever you wanted to. And some of them were showing us their fighting skills, and we've got Alec doing gymnastics, and we've got somebody with a hula hoop. And I mean, when it comes to youth, one of the things that we've talked about over and over on this show during this period has been sometimes you have to stretch that line of whether it's exactly period or not for the kids.
Yep.
For safety, but also just for inclusion, just to get them, involved. And that's what I love. I love hearing that that's a great memory for you, that you remember being called up so many times and your mom crying.
Yes.
A lot of kingdoms that I've been to will call up the youth of the kingdom and have them come forward. And there'll be like a treasure chest that they can pick a toy from, and they might have to chase down someone carrying the chest who runs off.
It was awesome.
So many kingdoms, they at least try very hard to give it a moment. But it's hard because I know even with lace, there's some really long courts.
Yeah. Well, and there really are, and that's one of the things where, if you do include the youth in the court, maybe having a good meeting with your herald and having that done earlier in court so that you can let them go if it's going to be one of those really, really long courts, because some of them are really, really, really long.
Yeah, and I don't begrudge excellencies and majesties for that. I really don't.
It's just it's really hard for the kids.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna hold a little kid hostage to you have to sit there quietly,
not for
an hour and a half.
Yeah.
No.
That's just never gonna fly.
No.
You're gonna start chewing on the chair or something just to do something.
Yeah.
And so frequently the boys I occasionally would have to get up and be like, I need you guys to play tag a little more quietly.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're doing great. You're doing great. Don't stop. I just need the volume a little lower.
Right.
louder than the herald.
Well, and some of those indoor halls are just way more loud than others. You know, the sound is bouncing off, and it doesn't take much for the din to get overwhelming in the background.
But it's, I don't want to hold the kids hostage to it. I
love including them, and there was so that was His Excellency the Baron of all Canadas that asked that question. I just realized, and he was when Avacol came down to Whipping Winds one year. They had one of those chests with the toys, and go chase this guy, and that was those kinds of things are just so fun.
They really are, and they add so much for the little kids, and even for the bigger kids. It's a way to include them without, and then it takes them out of court.
Yeah.
And then they're given something, and it's go back to your parents if you need to, or at a camping event, like, you guys are going to be done in court. You don't need to go back. And I also, everywhere I go now, I see A&S competitions that have youth categories. I do wish we saw more of that.
Yeah.
But again, I don't want to make the boys do a project, but I want them to do something, but I want them to want to do it. And so you end up with things that are like, you made a scabbard for a foam sword.
Yeah, I don't think we actually entered.
We did not. But it's a beautiful wood and leather carved out scabbard that's covered in leather, and it's strapped the same way my knighting sword is strapped. So it hangs at an angle. It's a beautifully done piece that holds a foam sword.
Yeah.
It looks really cool though. And so it's a combination of woodwork and leather work. So finding ways to keep kids interested in A&S, it's hard. Like you tell a kid, all right, so you're learning handwriting and now you're learning cursive. Let's learn calligraphy. And they're like,
that's one of the questions that's come up recently in our show is calling a school a good idea. Right? Anytime if you make it sound like it's work.
Yeah.
Don't.
It goes back to that whole Tom Sawyer thing of this painting the fence is really fun. It's how you present it to someone.
So, I mean, I've seen so many wonderful classes on, we're going to make butter. You know, you take a glass jar of cream and you just shake it around all day long. And then you got butter at the end of the day.
But they love it.
Oh, yeah. It's super fun. It's cool. And they can eat it at the end, which is a huge bonus.
Oh, yeah.
Make and take things are huge. Make and take are huge for kids.
But then, you start having to have a budget, and you start needing to know how many people you have and the logistics of it.
Yeah.
Rough.
Yeah.
Well, I am being reminded that we are almost done. I can't believe we're almost done. So I am going to let you think for a minute.
Okay.
And then I'll come back to you for your last thoughts and your shout outs. And I'm going to do some business for Cal for a couple of minutes.
All right.
Okay. So this is our last show of a look inside youth activities for the year. We are putting together a new show to take a look inside new things, most likely looking inside Bardic activities. And so look out here on Kal-bardr's Corner next year. And in that regard, I probably will try to talk to my friend Odde again, because he's Bardic is one of his favorite things. But for other content out here on Kal-bardr's Corner, upcoming shows. So Sunday, October 2nd, 2022 at 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. We have Road to Retention, interview with Her Ladyship Erin de Paladin. We have talked about recruiting and how to get people interested in the SEA, but we often neglect the conversation on how to keep them around in the years to come. For this series, the magnanimous Baroness Ramut Ataiba will be interviewing those of our society who have excelled at the skill of retention, picking their brains about various techniques, the good, the bad, the outrageous. For this episode, our host will be joined by Ladyship Erin de Paladin. Tune in to gather ideas, ask your questions, or just hear our guests' successes and failures within the topic. On Friday, October 7th, 2022, and I am devastated I'm going to miss this, but at 8 p.m. Mountain, we have the Dirty Pirate Party coming to you live from Great Western War 2022. This year at Great Western War, there will be a grand gathering from across the known world. On the deck of the Revenge, the hosts of KK Productions will bring our flags, our grog, and our oranges to a party of a piratical nature. Come on out to the Cock and Bull Tavern after the day's activities and don your best or worst pirate garb. Join us at the dice table, share in our snacks and drinks, and meet some of the hosts that you have seen on the internet throughout the last 2 years. Bonus points if you can make and bring your own pirate flag. There might even be a prize. And again, I'm so sorry I won't be there. I was expecting to go, but real life has shown up. And then next on Coffee with Cal on Sunday, October 23rd at 10 a.m., 11 a.m. Mountain. Enabling is a PLQ. As a peer, there are many jobs to be done and many peer-like qualities that get looked at for the up-and-coming. It is often a joke around the service community that you can become a pelican when you learn to say no. But perhaps it is more about learning to delegate and enable others. For this show, Cal will be sitting and chatting with Baroness Petrona the day after her stepping down as the Baroness of Shattered Crystal. Grab your coffee, bring your questions, and let's have a chat. As always, if you are interested in supporting any of the content out here on Kal-bardr's Corner, want to be part of our grand wall of patrons, you can always come out and find us out on patreon.com/KK Productions. You can also look for our stuff that we get for sale out on Redbubble. Support us out there. We've got stickers, do nightly things, sheets, all sorts of good stuff for all of the regular content that we have out there on KK Productions. As always, if you have any more questions for me, if you're interested in being part of the new show next year on Bardic, or have comments or anything, I am still working as a youth officer. Please feel free to shout out to me at isgerth@gmail.com. And if you have any questions for Odde or Alec, Alec is a youth, so you have to go through Odde. And he can be found on Facebook under his mundane name, Joe Park. Okay. Last thoughts for me. First, I just want to say that it has been just a pleasure doing this show. I've gotten so many really good ideas and comments from the guests and the people coming and watching, comments made out on Facebook, and in the comment sections on things. So thank you so much for your support. Youth is a very special area of what we do in this game, but I really believe that the youth are our future, to be, typical. But I think that we really need to look at ways that we can incorporate what we do to all of the ages of the youth. And that was one of the things for me. And so transitioning to an adult player, I think, finding ways for you to still be engaged during that period of time when you're a teenager is exactly what you need to do. Finding one special thing, I guess, is what I got out of our guests tonight. And last thoughts for you guys?
Yeah, it's mostly you find your thing and you go with it.
Find what makes you happy.
Yes.
All right.
You love within the dream that's there. It's big enough for everybody. There's something out there for absolutely everyone.
Absolutely, for sure. Okay, and shout outs.
Shout outs to Lady Allison Tamlin.
His mom.
Yeah.
Mom. She's a fabulous person.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
amazing.
She's amazing.
She's amazing.
I would like to give a shout out to everyone who's ever seen that kid at the event and said, "Hey, do you want to learn this thing? Do you want to play this game?" Or who's been willing to play the game of chess with the 14 to 16-year-old who's willing to give time out of their event to say, you know what? Yeah, let's play a quick game. Even if they get stomped or you stomp them, you made that kid's day. I really do mean that. If a kid asks you to play a game or spin a top or do anything, be aware that you made that kid's day. You made that kid's event.
Absolutely.
Shout out to anyone who does that and everyone who does that.
When my friend Duke Ibrahim was on the throne the last time, that was one of the things that I noticed he did at a Yule revel, actually. In Stan Worm, he was there for the day, and he came and he played a game of chess with Zany, and Zane was, I think, 11 years old or something at the time. And just the idea that the king sat down with him to play a game, he was just shocked. So,
and it's the level of respect because you're showing that you're worth my time.
Yes,
and especially to a kid, that to me that was always everything.
That's amazing.
Someone treated me like I was an adult. It made me feel like this is a place I want to be.
Absolutely. So along those lines, my shout out, I have two shout outs. The first one is you are worth my time is what you just said. And I want to give a shout out to my very good friend, Germain de l'Innocent, who's backstage, who when I first talked about doing this show, I needed someone I could count on who would spend the time with me once a month doing this. And she has been there throughout. She's my rock. She's always been a good friend of mine. And she's just amazing. Thank you, Jermaine. And my last one would go to Baron Kal-bardr, the Baron of Fun, who will always be an Artemisia Baron for me. I tuned into a show during the pandemic and went, wow, this is pretty cool. And then Ramut got her show, and I watched a couple of those, and I went, oh, wow. You know, you need to do something on youth. And Baron Cal just decided that meant that I was putting my hand up to do a show. That was the end of it. It's when are you going to do your show and when are you going to start it? And so I didn't even realize I had this in me, didn't even think I could do it. And I'm really, really thankful for the opportunity. It's been a joy and a pleasure, and I've gotten so many good ideas. I'm really looking forward to diving into Bardic, which is another one of my passions, and talking to people across the known world next year about Bardic. So thank you so much for taking time out of your life with me, and for any time you want to give to the youth of our game. Again, they are the future. This dream is big enough for all of us, as Audie just said. There's something there for all of us, and absolutely for the youth too. And so thank you so much, and we'll see you next year sometime when we decide to take another look inside. Thank you guys so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.